video, we're going to be comparing values of decimal numbers. So we're going to be using our comparison symbols. We've got less than is our first comparison symbol, greater than, and equal to. We're going to be using our comparison symbols. Remember, the smaller side goes towards the smaller number, and the bigger side goes towards the bigger number. Let's jump in with that very first one. Super, super easy. Just to remind us how comparison works, we have 62 and 85. So first things first, we look at the number to the farthest to the left. So I have a 6 in my tens place and a 6 in my tens place. You have to make sure they're in the same place value. But a 6 in the tens place and an 8 in the tens place, we know that the 8 is going to be bigger than the 6, so we can stop there and go ahead and say 62 is less than 85. Looks good, looks good. Let's look at that next one. So our next one says 63 and 2/10 compared to 63 and 3/10. So I see that my 6 in my tens place is the same for both numbers, so I have to keep going. My 3 in my ones place is the same for both numbers, so I have to keep going. But the 2 in the tenths place is different than the 3 in the tenths place. And I know that the 2 is smaller than the 3, so the 63 and 2/10 is less than 63 and 3/10. Let's good. Let's good. Let's look at the next one. I'm going to do one more for you, then you're going to start doing them on your own. This first number is 62 and 2/100 compared to 62 and 20/100. So let's compare. I see the 6 in the tens place is the same. The 2 in the ones place is the same. But in this number, the 0 is in the tenths place. And in this number, the 2 is in the tenths place. That means that the 0 is less than the 2. So we've got another less than. Our 62 and 2/100 is going to be less than 62 and 20/100. All right, we've got a few more. Go ahead and try this next one on your own. It's a little bit tricky on purpose. You've got 8 and 250 thousandths compared to 8 and 25/100. Go ahead and compare those two numbers. For this one, we see that the 8 in the ones place is exactly the same. The 2 in the tenths place, exactly the same. The 5 in the hundredths place, exactly the same. This has a 0 in the thousandths place, and this has nothing in the thousandths place. So we have to compare a 0 to nothing. We know that 0 equals nothing, so these are actually going to be completely equal. It doesn't matter how many zeros you add to the end of a number that's a decimal, because it's not going to change the value. It's the same. Let's look at the bottom here. If I was to write 543 and I was to put a couple zeros in the front of it, that doesn't change anything. It's still 543. Decimals are the same. If I were to say 5 and 43/100 and add a bunch of zeros at the end, it looks bigger, but it doesn't actually do anything. You could cross all those out and it means nothing. It's still 5 and 43/100. All right, go ahead and try the next one. For this one, you should have noticed that the 2 in the ones place is exactly the same, but the 6 in the tenths place versus the 5 in the tenths place. We know that the 6 is bigger than the 5, so we can say 2 and 64/100 is greater than 2 and 52/100. Go ahead and try the next one. For this one, I hope you notice that the 5 in the ones place is exactly the same. The 2 in the tenths place is exactly the same. But when we get to that 3 in the hundredths place, we have a 5 in the hundredths place over here. And I know that the 3 is smaller than the 5. So 5 and 234 thousandths is less than 5 and 254 thousandths. One more comparison over here before we move on to the other side. Go ahead and try it. For this one, you should have said your 6 is exactly the same. Your 2 and your tenths place is exactly the same. So we have to compare the 4 and the 3 in the hundredths place. And I know that the 4 is bigger. So you have greater than. 6 and 24/100 is greater than 6 and 23/100. All right, let's go back up here to the top and continue working on these. We have a lot of comparisons today. Go ahead and try that first one. For this one, you should have noticed that the 7 is the same, the 2 in the tenths place is the same, the 4 in the hundredths place is the same. We are comparing the 9 in the thousandths and the 8 in the thousandths, and we know that the 9 is greater. That tells me that 7 and 249 thousandths is greater than 7 and 248 thousandths. I tried talking too fast. Go ahead and look at the next one. For this one, we're comparing the 2 in the ones, the 5 in the tenths, the 2 in the hundredths, and we get to a 4 in the thousandths compared to a 3 in the thousandths over here. I know that the 4 is greater. So I have 2 and 524 thousandths is greater than 2 and 523 thousandths. Go ahead and try that next one. For this one, you should have noticed the 5 is in the ones place is the same. The 1 in the tenths place is the same. But once you get to this hundredths place, we have a 4 and an 8. And we know that this 4 is smaller than the 8. So that tells us that 5 and 148 thousandths is less than 5 and 184 thousandths. Go ahead and try the next one. I hope you said that the 6 in the ones place is the same. The 8 in the tenths place is the same, but the 0 in the hundredths place is very different than the 1 in the hundredths place over here. I know that a 0 is less than 1. So that means that 6 and 806 thousandths is less than 6 and 817 thousandths. Move on to this very last one of this part here. We've got 7 and 245 thousandths compared to 7 and 248 thousandths. For this one, you should have noticed that the 7s are the same in the ones place. Your 2s are the same in the tenths place. Your 4s are the same in the hundredths place. But we have a 5 and an 8 in the thousandths place. And we know that that 5 is less than the 8. So 7 and 245 thousandths is less than 7 and 248 thousandths. All right, let's move on to the bottom part. The bottom part's a little bit different because you have to put them in numerical order. Remember, numerical order just means number order, least to greatest. So let's take a look at our numbers here. As we can see, I'm going to look at our ones place first. That's the biggest place value. We've got a 3, an 8, a 5, and a 1. Wow, that made life super easy. We can just order it by the place value of the ones place. Let's go least to greatest. We've got 1 and 345 thousandths. So that's that one. I'm going to cross it out. The next lowest number starts with a 3. So we've got 3 and 45 thousandths. Cross that one out. 5 and 67 thousandths. Cross it out. And last but not least, 8 and 467 thousandths. Looking good, looking good. I should have said 67 hundredths with that 5. I hope you caught it. Let's look at this last one. I'm going to have you do this last one. It's probably going to be a challenge. You have to really compare each number and decide what order they should go in, least to greatest. For this one, I hope you notice that the 3 in the ones place is all the same. It's when you get to that tenths place that we see we have a 5, a 4, a 5, and a 5. So know that the 4 is smallest. So we're going to go 3 and 486 thousandths first. Cross it out. Now let's look at our tenths place. I've got a 6, an 8, and an 8. I know that the 6 is smaller than the 8, so that's my next number. 3 and 56 hundredths. Cross it out. So now we have 3 and 580 thousandths compared to 3 and 589 thousandths. I can see that the next number to compare is a 0 and a 9, and that 9 is much bigger. So my next number in order from least to greatest is going to be 3 and 580 thousandths. And then 3 and 589 thousandths. Looks good, looks good. I hope you got your notes copied correctly. If you have any questions, back it up and look at them again. Go ahead and get started on that classwork.